All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. And as I mentioned at the onset, I'm going to talk a little bit about what RareX is, why we're here, what we're solving for exactly, to see if it might be a fit for you and your communities. Just talk about the RareX approach and how we do this data collection and why we do it, and the data governance that's required to even do something like this, and kind of a little bit why we're different. There are other places where rare communities can go to do data collection, and I'll talk a little bit about what RareX does that's a little different than others. So first of all, RareX is a nonprofit. And we were created to accelerate rare disease research and treatments and cures by removing barriers for data collection and sharing. So really, we enable you to collect data from your community so you can give that data to researchers. So we make that as painless as possible for you to do data collection. So we're a platform that collects, connects, and shares that data. So at the front end, you and your community will put survey data into RareX, it sits in a cloud, and then at the back end, researchers will be able to access that data. And every time I talk about data in this presentation, it's always de-identified data, meaning the researcher will never know the name or have contact information about the patient whose data they're looking at. RareX does not own the data once you put it in. We do not sell the data. We actually don't do a ton of analysis on the data ourselves. Again, we're trying to make it available to the specialists, to the researchers who are really trying to get answers to different kinds of rare diseases. We're built on a backbone of really great technologies through the Broad Institute, which is part of Harvard and MIT. We're using a technology that existed for years and is used it's already in place being used. We're just trying to bring the rare community on board into a collection. Now, RareX is not a replacement if you're already doing research or have clinician-sponsored patient research. We don't really replace that. We can maybe help validate some of that. But we would not, you wouldn't give up some other research to come to RareX necessarily. And why are we even here? Why do we exist? Well, the problem with rare disease, as you guys know, the numbers are really small. So the trick is we have to get as many rare disease patients participating in research to give the data any value so researchers can do something with it. But what happens today is often a group will do, say, a natural history study. A natural history study is just basically looking at taking survey data of the patient's journey over time and seeing how that evolves, how their prognosis evolves over time. And there are, my organization did this. We've had natural history studies with specific institutions. The problem is we've had our community put that data in, and it sits basically in a silo at that institution. Other researchers around the world won't have easy access to that data. They may have access if they request it, but it's not as easy as just logging into a computer and getting into the data right away. The other issue in rare disease data collection is sometimes the data that's there is not structured or standardized or formatted in a way that researchers can use. So the FDA is very specific about how survey data is done and what's valid data. And so an example, one of my counterparts at RareX, she was in charge of a patient registry for her community. They spent 10 years building it and collected all this data. And then later, when they were ready to give it to researchers, the researchers said, well, this isn't standardized the way, we can't really use this data. So after all that work, they couldn't use that data. We make sure the data is structured and standardized. And the last is, groups just haven't even started to collect data yet for research. And biggest reason is it's very hard to do it right. So what RareX does is, and this is kind of a big visual to kind of give you a sense of it, but your disease community, and these are real disease communities that are part of RareX, are along the top. You'll have your own website already, or some way, whether it's even a Facebook group or whatever. You'll have a way that you're bringing your community together. What we do is we build a community page for you, which is basically the front door of someone coming into RareX and starting the data collection program to add their data. And then after someone goes to that community page, they get in the data collection program itself. And there's very specific consent surveys. You're obviously providing consent to make your data available. There's data sharing surveys where you will identify how or what kind of data you're willing to have shared. And again, it's always de-identified data. There's a general information survey, which is a little more of a demographics, just for our understanding of who's coming onto the program. And then really the first survey that gets into sort of the patient's condition is the health and development survey. It's a whole head to toe survey. And that will trigger what other kinds of surveys you get later. And then on the back end of all this, researchers can access this. They can access it from anywhere in the world. The researcher could be, may not be a medical researcher. They may be just a citizen scientist who has a great AI system for looking at commonalities of data. So it could be pharmaceuticals, it could be research institutions. Basically, any researcher would have access to the data that's in here. So, why did we create this? Why does this even exist, or why is this important? Well, on the left side, you see kind of the old model, or a patient community, or what we call a patient advocacy group, a PAG, might work with a single researcher, or might get to know a couple researchers that are doing a study, and they're working to get their community to provide that researcher data, and that's stored with that researcher. With RareX, more on the right side, patient groups can enter all kinds of data, and all kinds of researchers can access that data. More researchers can access that data on the back end of that. One thing we'll talk about a lot at RareX and kind of why we're different. RareX is under what's called an umbrella institutional review board, IRB. You'll hear that term a lot. Basically, it's kind of an ethics review board of how the study is being done or how research is being collected. But then there's all kinds of other things we have to make sure our system has. Obviously, security and privacy. There's country by country compliance and regulations. You might have heard the term GDPR. This is requirements if you have a website that's in, say, a European country, and things that are required of that if you're collecting data. Well, we have to have all the right kind of informed consent. We have to make sure all the data is de-identified, and that we're always adhering to patients' rights and their sharing preferences. So I'm going to get into a little bit of detail here, but as I mentioned, there are surveys, and the surveys will be asking questions of the patient or the caregiver of that patient. So a level 1 survey is sort of this head to toe. It's this health and development survey. It's basically going to ask very easy to understand questions. Are there issues with skin? Yes or no. Are there issues with behavioral development? Yes or no. Are there issues with GI issues? Are there issues with vision? And depending on if you answer yes, then you'll get a second, what we call level 2 surveys. So it's kind of you said there were issues with vision. More specifically, what are those issues? And they'll ask those questions out. This is all the surveys that are basically on the platform under the green oval there. We have many new surveys coming on board. In fact, we have at the end of this year, there's going to be about 5 or 6 new neurodevelopmental surveys that'll be on board. And then we also have the right side does show some of the level 2 surveys that are already in place too, but more are coming. We're always adding more. And how do we even do these surveys? Well, we actually put together an expert group, and that group will be people from industry. It'll be people represented by rare disease groups. It'll be researchers themselves. It'll even be groups like through the NIH or NCATS. And this group will determine the surveys and what surveys are for each sort of level 2 or even level 3. Level 3 surveys would really be getting much deeper into a very specific disease condition. These are all the surveys right now that are available. You'll see that we list the number of questions in each survey. There's a dashboard, and you'll also see that we tell the approximate timing it would take to do each survey. That timing is very conservative. Most people say it takes about a third of the time to do the surveys than what we mentioned, the length of time doing a survey. So how does this benefit down to the family level or to the patient themselves? Well, we'll be giving aggregated data back to the patient advocacy group, to the leadership, and they can provide that data back to their patient community. So they could say, 60% of our patient community has seizures, and 30% of our patient community is having growth development issues. So by just giving that data back in the aggregate, you get a sense of even where your patient, if you're the caregiver, is compared to the rest of that community. If eligible, we have a way that a researcher might pull together data, might be doing data on seizures, say, and might look across many different rare diseases, maybe not just a particular one rare disease, and then they could actually pull together a clinical trial. And they could, and when you do your sharing survey, you could say if you're willing to be approached if there is a clinical trial. It doesn't mean you're signing up for a clinical trial. It just means that if a researcher is very interested in your disease or symptoms within your disease, they might reach out to you, or through us, they'd reach out and say, we'd like to get these patients to participate in a clinical trial if they are willing. The other benefits are more universal to the whole community. It's just you'll have more researchers actually seeing this data. And again, the way it's collected, a researcher may not know anything about your particular disease, and this might be the case in some ultra rare diseases, but just looking at the data, de-identified, they might find commonalities of your rare disease with another rare disease, and then suddenly that might become a bigger group that the research could be done with. We offer a way for you to help connect yourselves with patient organizations through signing up. You can actually update as symptoms change. That's a nice thing about this program. You can do it obviously from your home, from a laptop, from a mobile device. You could do it while you're waiting in line at the grocery store. So it's very convenient. You don't have to go to a research institution to give this data in. And then you can update as changes happen. So if a new diagnosis happens or medicines change or something like that, you can always update it too. So those are the big reasons for why patients want to get involved. And why do patient groups want to do this? Well, one, their end goal is to get faster research and more drug development going. The other is we do the heavy lifting of all the structured and data standardization, and also the security for the whole system. So basically it's all the governance around it. The other reason why patient groups like it is the patient is the one who owns and manages their data. So even a patient group doesn't own the data. It always comes down to the individual patient and how they consent or how they fill out their data sharing survey as to what will be available to researchers. And the other benefit, honestly, to patient groups is there's no cost, and there's also no cost to researchers. As I mentioned at the onset, we are a nonprofit. We are funded through grants. We are funded through pharmaceutical companies. And the question might be, well, why would a pharmaceutical company fund us? Well, pharmaceuticals don't want to get in the business of creating registries or data repositories, but they want to use the data. So there's an understanding, especially in the rare space, that they can make a small contribution to RareX, have a whole bunch of data about a certain set of diseases that they can then suddenly access. These are all the diseases that are on the platform right now. So we have 41 diseases right now. This grows literally every couple months because we bring in what's called a class, a group of different patient advocacy group leaders will be a class. That class can be anywhere from 4 or 5 patient groups to 15 patient groups. And we take that class to sort of what to expect, the training, how to promote it out to their community. So of those 41 diseases, they're actually represented by 68 patient advocacy groups. In some cases, as you can imagine, there's multiple patient advocacy groups around one disease. And most of the time, patient advocacy groups see the value in this. They understand, okay, this is a single place. Even though we aren't part of that other group, we know that we want more and more patients with the disease to come onto the platform to offer their data. So they actually cooperate and work together to help promote this out. And the benefit for researchers, it's probably a little obvious, but one, it's, as I mentioned, it's free for researchers. 2, they know the data they're getting is standardized. They know it's quality. It meets a standard that they can use to publish on. They also can do it globally from anywhere in the world, and they're also going to get data in the platform from anywhere in the world. They know the data is all consented. So once they start going in and working with the data, it's okay for them to be using that data. And again, always de-identified data. The other thing we do is we curate data, especially genetic data, because as you can imagine, a genetic report that you upload identifies the name of the patient. Well, we curate that and remove any identifiers. So it's just the genetic data tied to the survey results. Those are the biggest reasons why researchers are involved. So the flow of it is a patient community might have their own website. A patient might learn about this from their website or from their own social media. They come onto the community page to get started. They recognize what our terms of use are. They basically get a password and basically enroll in the data collection program itself. They get to see the consent, they get to see the preference, data sharing preference survey, and then they can jump right in and start doing the surveys themselves. So here's an example. This is a community page. So we would build a page like this for you. All it does is explain, this is not a RareX data collection program. This is your disease's data collection program. So in this case, it's AHC. This is their data collection program community page. This community page just has some general information about data collection, why even participate. At the very bottom of this community page, we offer frequently asked questions, and that can be kind of toggled to, click the buttons to the right, and you can see the answer to each of those questions. There's a high-level translation of this community page. Again, it's more of a web like Google Translate, so it's not going to be a perfect translation, but this is available. Now, let me talk a little bit about translation. At this time, the RareX data collection program is only in English. We are working as quickly as we can to expand the languages so we can get this more useful in many other countries. I believe the next languages that will be translated on the data collection program itself will be Spanish, French, and Portuguese. But we'll always be looking to add more and more translation. So now that doesn't seem to be, clearly that's a hindrance. It's a hindrance, and our goal is to get this as translated as widely as possible. But we today, of those 41 disease communities that are diseases that are part of the RareX platform, about 40% of all people participating are outside of the United States. So, so as long as they can, as long as the person filling it out understands English or has somebody who can help them with that, they can answer the survey questions. This is an example of just a whole bunch of different community pages. So again, every disease has their own data collection program and community pages they come in. And we provide basically, support all along the way. So there's a training program, lasts for about 5 weeks, where we work with you to understand what's going to be needed to set this up. There's all kinds of educational resources on our website. We have webinars. We provide other videos where we'll have science and research updates for the community leaders, tell them where the platform is going, what new surveys are coming on board. So we don't leave you hanging once you sign on, because the whole value of this is not only for the immediate group of patient communities to come on board, but then as new patients find that community to also come in and put their data in, or changes down the road. At your 1-year anniversary of adding data, you will probably get an email from us to say, hey, come on back and here's some updates or here's some new surveys. When a new survey is loaded up in that head to toe survey, if you said yes, that's a condition or an issue, and a new survey for that condition pops up, you'll get an email notification too. So what's the commitment for patient advocacy groups? As I mentioned, it's 5 weeks. It's really only 1 hour a week. It's just a Zoom call where we explain everything from how the data is going to be used, how you will access the data through the dashboard, and we'll also let you work with logging into it, make sure you all understand how to access the whole data collection program, because you might get questions from your community about it. And then we also show you ways to market this out to your community too. The next class will be coming on in a January timeframe. They'll probably start launching out to their whole communities in a February timeframe. And the launch, when I say launch, is there's a community webinar. You host it, but we present at it and we explain about this whole data collection program. And we have examples of the actual program screen grabs. So really, we handle, again, a lot of heavy lifting. We do all the governance. Obviously, it's our platform. We assure that we're adhering to any required standards like GDPR. When you come on, you do sign a collaboration agreement with us. Basically, it's just the whole point of signing that agreement is any aggregate data you see, you'll be ethical about using it. We actually, for the dashboard that we provide you to see, we will, for the people in your community that have access to that dashboard, we will pay for something called city training, which is basically an online ethics training. And we do that just, again, so full transparency that the people in your community that have access to the aggregate data, again, not the identified data by the individual, that they are adhering to using that data in the best way possible. Obviously, we'll ask you to attend the Zoom meetings, provide enough assets, photo, branding, for the community page. And then really just after that, it's just help promote it and keep promoting it to your community. So that's it. In kind of summary, I'm gonna stop recording here.